A lot of you have been asking, where's Fred? Well, he chose not to nest in our new box, but hopefully he'll come here next year. And once the soup kitchen froze over and his frogs are gone, he's changed his diet. But haven't seen him of late, but we are seeing remnants of bird feathers and such. So anyway, he's still around. Floor's coming along, got the trap door roughed out, and this is the vantage point one we'll have from the second story of the blockhouse. And I tell you, I pity anybody who comes out of that woodlot with the intent of attacking this fortification. This is an exciting day. So yesterday I finished the floor, and I did a calculation on the weight, and those green oak boards, I figured there's about 3,300 pounds of wood that is both the ceiling and the floor for the upper story. The first two logs are going up, and yeah, before I do that, I'll give you a tour of the inside of a blockhouse. Half a blockhouse. Initially, I was going to have two standalone bunks, one either side of the door. Two, possibly three tiers. They'll be narrow, but I think I can get three, so I could sleep 6 in the bottom story. Build a set of ladder, or a staircase, I should say, that'll go up here. But once I calculated the roof of or the weight of the floor, I decided I'm going to put rock down once the snow is gone, and these posts for the bunk bed, one will go there, one will go there. The same on the opposite side, and that's going to help support a lot of that weight, as will the ladder. All right, I'm going to go upstairs and show you what the top looks like with the floor on it. Yep, kind of tickled pink. So I'm going to get those first two logs up here, and I've got a bunch more to peel. So I'm a solid 8 feet on the lower floor. I'll be another 8 feet on the upper floor, and then I've got a roof. So yeah, we're going to be up there about 25 feet by the time I'm done. But anyway, enough lollygagging. Get some logs up. It's interesting, I never used a level on the lower floor construction, and so I just did everything by eye, and when I put a level on the floor when I was done, I'm out about 1/4 of an inch from the front to the back. And one of the ways I do that is there's quite a bit of taper, especially to cedar, so I stagger the ends. So big end here, small end on that side, small end here, when the next log that's going to go 90 degrees to it, big end there. And just doing that in itself turned out pretty level. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I'm pretty excited that I'm soon going to have a second story. Little secret to tying a clove hitch. You can just wrap it around and make sure you're the right side when you put it back through. Or you cross your hands like so, bring them across, put this loop behind this loop, and you've got a clove hitch ready made. And because it's a hitch, you need a half hitch, one single half hitch for security. Oh, and note to self, on the first log in my excitement, almost stepped in a trap door hole. So I got to be careful there. That's progress. So second story has started. I got one complete round done. I'm starting to do some sheeting where I don't have logs because of the overhang. Get that done, and I'm afraid it's back to the bush to cut some more trees, and back to the peeling, my favorite job. I'm a wee bit peckish. I think I'm going to make myself some dinner, split some wood, get the fire going, get a little sustenance in me, and then head into the bush. So there's one thing we take for granted in our modern world. It's the thing that I'm holding. I'm going to talk today a wee bit of history about my ancestors who all hailed from Ireland, and they didn't have this, or very little of it. And we think of that Emerald Island, this beautiful green island in the Atlantic, but it wasn't green from leaves on trees, it was green from turf. Now, Canada, which is a huge country, and we have some of the largest peat, because we think of it as peat everywhere else. The Irish simply called it turf. But Canada has some of the largest deposits in the world. In fact, Cathy and I canoed the Mackenzie River a few years ago, and it's one of the largest deposits in our country. But without that material, the Erin or Ireland, whatever you want to call it, wouldn't have existed. They wouldn't have been able to inhabit it because they needed it for fuel. They have cold winters. They needed it to cook their food. And it's a very labor-intensive process. So the Irish would make it, it had to be done in the summer. It was always a family project. And as I say, hugely labor-intensive. It was hand-dug. They had a special spade, and I'd like to be able to pronounce the name of it. It's Gaelic, and I'd probably screw it up, so I won't. Well, I'll give it a try. I think it's called a slan. But anyway, it's hand-dug. And then it's laid out on the surface, and it's allowed to dry, and they frequently flip it as it dries. Then it's lifted and it's stacked vertically into these small piles, and that process is called footing. After it's reasonably dry, it's put in these humongous piles called rickets, and then it's burnt. But so for thousands of years it's done, but let's fast forward to Black 47. So in the summer of 1846, And we're talking the height of the Irish famine, and there was more than one. There were multiple famines, but this is going to be the culminate in the worst one. So the summer of 1846, when the Irish people should have been working diligently to get in their winter's fuel, well, it's pretty hard to do that kind of labor-intensive work when you have nothing in your stomach, and they had nothing in their stomachs. So come the winter of 46, 47, they have a huge inadequate supply of heating and fuel to cook. And to make matters worse, it's one of the worst records they can, or winters that they can remember on record. It was bitterly cold. And they ended up trying to dry, and they did. They dried cow manure, and they'd use that for cooking and some modest amount of heat that would come off of it. So one of my favorite songs is called Kilkelly, Ireland, and there's one line in the song that goes something like, because of the dampness there's no turf to speak of, and now there's nothing to burn. Anyway, the life of the Irish. After that 46, 47 winter, millions immigrated to the New World. I believe close to 20% of the entire Irish population had to leave that island. I have a sister-in-law that immigrated from Ireland in the 60s, late 60s, and she married my older brother. And we invited her out to the Woodland Escape, to the Cedar Holler Tavern once, and she said, "Oh, Peter," she said, "I spent half my life being warm on one side." And she was referring to the fireplaces that they burnt the turf into. Personally, I've never smelt it burn, but apparently it has this rather pleasant, unique thing. And well, I'm kind of a Scotch drinker, so I can appreciate the smell, the note on a dram of Scotch, and the flavor of that peat that they use. Sadly, peat is being depleted at a very rapid rate, and although it's reproducing itself, it could hardly be called sustainable. Peat's used often in agricultural and gardening applications, and there are places in the world now where that's banned. Admittedly, Cathy and I do use a little bit of peat. However, we reuse it. The peat we have is used over and over again. So we use it in our root cellar to store our root crops, our carrots, our beets, potatoes, and what have you, in the peat. It doesn't get thrown away, it gets reused. But anyway, that's a wee bit of history, and my stomach is growling, and I'm going to go get this fire started and get some victuals on. So often we see people starting fires with char cloth. And it was done, we know historically it was done. However, people didn't cut up their valuable cloth to make char cloth. It was a rare commodity and very expensive. So typically they'd use punkwood, or if you're in the northern part of the hemisphere like we are up here, chaga, which is a fungus on birch trees, is the go-to. And so if I strike a spark in there and get an ember on one of those things, they're crazy. It can be a deluge of rain and it will not go out. So it's a great way to start fire, and certainly one of the more authentic ones over using char cloth on a regular basis. So you can see that's going to burn forever. It's simply the best material one can use for starting any kind of a fire. One doesn't have to be in a big hurry to do this. That ember is going to burn in there for a long time. So it can be a howling wind. In fact, if it was outside and the wind was howling, this would already be in flames. It needs a little oxygen to get it going.